I've always been a guy who trusts too easily, some would say to a fault. After 17 years of marriage, I never thought I'd be the one suspiciously scrolling through a credit card statement like a cliché in a bad movie. But here I was. My name's Alex Mason. I'm 45, based in Denver, and I run operations at a logistics and distribution firm. Nothing glamorous, but I've built a solid life with it. Steady job, house in the foothills, 2 kids, a dog that barks at everything, and a marriage I believed was built on trust. Turns out, belief isn't always enough. Started small, like most things do. Carol, my wife, had been promoted recently regional marketing director. Sounded fancy. Came with a raise? Sure. But also a sudden wave of off-site strategy sessions, client dinners, and team-building cocktails. She said it came with the role, and honestly, I didn't question it. We were both busy. I often worked late myself, and we'd always prided ourselves on not being one of those clingy couples who needed to report every movement. But on a Thursday morning in early October, I found a receipt on the console table by the front door. It must have slipped out of her purse while she was grabbing her keys. Nothing about it screamed scandal, just an e-taxi receipt. Digital. Timestamped. 8:47 p.m. Pickup from Low-High, drop-off at a boutique hotel downtown. My stomach turned. Carol had told me the night before that she was going out with coworkers. Nothing special, just a low-key happy hour to blow off steam after a rough week. But the hotel? That wasn't their usual scene. It was the kind of place you book when you're trying to impress someone. Not colleagues. Someone else. The second receipt confirmed the feeling. A bar tab, 2 cocktails just after 9 p.m. From the hotel lounge. No dinner. No appetizers. Just drinks. 2 of them. Int asterisk mate. Purposeful. That's when I checked her Instagram story. More out of reflex than suspicion. She'd posted one of those artsy, shallow depth of field sh*ts. 2 cocktails. Fancy garnishes. Soft lighting. Candle on the table. She'd tagged the location vaguely. Just downtown Denver. Nothing too specific. Nothing traceable unless you knew what to look for. But I noticed something she didn't. In the background of the photo was a mirror. In the mirror's corner, a reflection. A man's hand. Watch. Ring. His hand was close to hers, resting on the bar. Not in a flirty way, but in a familiar way. Casual. Relaxed. Like this wasn't their first drink together. I stared at that photo for longer than I want to admit. Zoomed in. Backed out. Took **ts. My heart was pounding, and I wasn't even sure why. It wasn't like I'd caught her mid-act. But something about that image, that quiet reflection in the mirror, felt like a puzzle piece snapping into place. That night I brought it up, not accusingly, just curious. How was happy hour? I asked as she came in, slipping off her heels. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, poured herself a glass of water. It was fine. A little long. Dana wouldn't stop talking about her engagement. Where'd you guys end up going? Someplace downtown. New bar. I can't remember the name. Starts with a B, I think. Was it at a hotel? I asked. She didn't miss a beat. No, just a rooftop spot. I think the bar was above a hotel, though. Why? I shrugged. Just curious. She narrowed her eyes slightly, then smiled. What, are you jealous now? She teased, leaning against the counter. Alex Mason. Checking my location? I laughed it off, but something inside me flinched. That's when I realized. She wasn't defensive. She was too relaxed. Like she'd rehearsed it. Like she expected questions. Later that night, she fell asleep beside me, same as always. But I didn't. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to breathe past the quiet ache in my chest. I thought about the receipts, the drinks, the hotel, and then the other things I'd been ignoring. Her phone used to buzz openly. Now it lived face down silent mode. She changed the passcode last week. Didn't say anything. Not that she had to, but it used to be the date of our anniversary. Now I couldn't guess it if I tried. Then there was the gym membership. She joined a boutique studio a month ago. Said she needed something different from our neighborhood fitness center. I thought nothing of it. She'd always cared about staying healthy. But when I checked the app on her phone last week to book us a couples class, like we used to do, I noticed something strange. No recent activity. Nothing for 2 weeks. But her gym bag was in the laundry twice last week. And then there were the clothes. Laundry loads at 11 p.m. Clothes she hadn't worn around me. A new perfume, stronger, sharper. Not her usual subtle scent. And lingerie tags in the trash that she clearly hadn't worn at home. I started remembering everything I'd dismissed. The little purchases she made on her business card. A new visa issued by her company. She said it was for reimbursable expenses. But I saw the statements. Wine bars, Ubers, a nail salon nowhere near her office. Another boutique hotel charge. Under event space rental. For what event? Even the shared location tracking we used for years, just so we could find each other easily in traffic or when picking up the kids, was suddenly off. She claimed it was an iOS bug. Maybe I was losing it. Or maybe I was finally seeing clearly. That weekend, I asked if she wanted to go out. Just the two of us. We haven't had a date night in forever, I said. Let's get a sitter. She hesitated, eyes darting. I actually told Rachel I'd help her move. Saturday's the only day her lease overlaps. It was a lie. Rachel had already moved. I knew that because Rachel's husband is on my bowling team, and he told me last week they were settling into their new place. I didn't call her out. I just nodded and smiled. That's when I decided to stop playing defense. I started backing things up, photos from our shared iCloud, calendar appointments from her synced account, location data from old phone backups. I wasn't trying to be sneaky. I was trying to understand what had changed. Why my wife, the woman who used to laugh into my chest and fall asleep watching crime documentaries beside me, had started guarding her life like it was some private vault I no longer had the key to. I told myself I'd give it a week. If nothing else happened, I'd let it go. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe I was projecting. Work had been stressful. Our Aunt Macy had faded a bit. Sure, but that's marriage, right? But part of me already knew the truth. It wasn't just the receipts or the hotel or the mirror. It was the distance. Emotional, physical, digital. The tiny fracture lines spreading between us. The way she looked at me like I was in the way. The way her stories didn't quite line up. The way she started using corporate buzzwords in regular conversation, like she was practicing for someone else's approval. Like she was becoming someone else entirely. I didn't know where this was going yet, but I knew it had started. And if there's one thing I've learned from managing operations all these years, it's that patterns don't lie. You just have to look close enough, and everything reveals itself. Even love. Even betrayal. The human brain is funny. It can filter out the obvious for the sake of comfort, just so you don't have to deal with what's right in front of you. But once I let myself see Carol's shift, not just the symptoms, but the actual change in her, I couldn't unsee it. It was like my senses sharpened. The lies stood out in bold font. The gaps in her stories became doorways I couldn't stop walking through. So I started tracking. Not in some deranged, stalkerish way. I wasn't about to plant GPS devices in her car or anything like that. I just started gathering. Quietly. Intentionally. Methodically. The next Thursday, she had another client dinner. I smiled and told her to have fun. Meanwhile, I made a habit of checking our shared cloud services. We both had iPhones and synced devices. It's amazing what people forget. If you take a live photo and you're still logged into a shared iCloud account, those few extra seconds, the little video before and after the sh*t, can tell a whole different story than a still image. At 9:12 p.m., a new live photo landed in our iPad photo stream. It was her in a dim hotel room. Blurred background, but enough light to see a figure beside her. A man. He leaned in and kissed her. Her smile, captured mid-motion, wasn't for the camera. It was for him. I didn't breathe for a full minute. I tapped into the metadata. Something she clearly didn't realize was stored. The location matched the same boutique hotel from the receipt I'd found earlier. The timestamp? Exactly during her client dinner. Even worse, it wasn't just one image. There were 6, all snapped in sequence. Different angles, same man, same room, same betrayal. She'd synced them without noticing. Or maybe she'd forgotten the iPad existed. It lived in the kitchen drawer mostly now. But I never forgot it. I rarely forget anything. I exported the files, saved them on a secure drive, and turned off syncing. She'd never know I'd seen them. The man in the photo. Took a bit to figure him out. But I remembered him. Ryan Doyle. I'd met him at one of Carol's work functions maybe a year ago. Client manager for a supplier her company worked with. The kind of guy who talked about himself like he was a brand. Polished. Tan in winter. A handshake that lingered one beat too long. Back then, I brushed him off. Figured he was just another corporate type. But now his name stuck like a stone in my throat. I pulled up old photos from that same event. There he was, hand on Carol's back, laughing too hard at one of her jokes. I hadn't thought anything of it. Now I realized that look in his eyes wasn't polite. It was predatory. And worse, she'd let him. I started compiling. Not out of vengeance, not yet. Just documentation. I created a private folder labeled Timeline. Inside, I logged every receipt, photo, calendar event, and charge that didn't make sense. Carol had a new business credit card, supposedly issued for department expenses. But every week, more charges appeared at wine bars and restaurants far outside her company's district. Places that didn't match her schedule or her story. I pulled her Apple Wallet history. She'd used a digital room key at that hotel 3 times in 2 weeks. 3 times. Late checkout fees appeared on the statements. Not work reimbursed. She covered those personally. Odd. For a woman who once argued over a $14 minibar charge on a family trip. I wanted to scream, but instead, I booked a one-way ticket to Lisbon. I told no one, not even my closest friends. Carol thought I was going to a conference in Austin. I packed a carry-on, left before sunrise, and by nightfall, I was renting a tiny room in Alfama with a chipped view of the water and a rusted balcony that creaked when I leaned against it. I wasn't running. I was repositioning. From Lisbon, I rebuilt myself, not emotionally yet, but structurally. I opened a secured cloud account, exported everything I'd gathered, mirrored the data across multiple encrypted backups. I consulted 2 attorneys anonymously via secure chat rooms. Yes, those exist if you look hard enough, and uploaded the digital evidence. I froze our joint accounts, not fully, but enough to limit risk. Locked my credit. Created a trust for the kids. Moved funds discreetly. Carol would barely notice the changes until she tried to buy something big. Then she'd wonder why her card flagged. From Lisbon, I started investigating him. Ryan Doyle. Turns out he wasn't just a charming suit. He had a past. Civil lawsuits in 2 states settled, never criminal. Multiple former employers listed vague, ethical concerns in their separation agreements. A business registration in Arizona that had been revoked for noncompliance. Leases opened, never paid. A LinkedIn resume that read like a fiction novel, half the companies now defunct or impossible to verify. Then I found her company's supplier history. Carol's department had fast-tracked a side agreement with Ryan's firm 6 weeks ago. Approved through an expedited review. She was listed as the internal sign-off. Conflict of interest. Financial misconduct. Possibly more. It was no longer just betrayal. It was risk. To our family. To our name. To our children's future. So I compiled everything: emails, calendar invites, financial overlaps, travel receipts, **TS of her and Ryan in matching locations on the same days she claimed to be out of town separately. I sent it all to her company's anonymous compliance office with the subject line, Internal Audit Concern, Vendor Conflict/Executive Misconduct. 2 weeks later, I got an alert on our shared email. A suspension notice. Carol's work badge had been deactivated. Then the second blow came. A message from an unknown number. Hi, my name's Beth. I was with Ryan for 3 years. I saw your report. I have more if you want it. Called her. We talked for an hour. Beth had been through the same story. Ryan had seduced her during a previous role where she was managing accounts for another vendor. Same playbook. Same manipulation. She'd filed a restraining order. Had documentation. **TS. Even recordings. She sent it all. Carol was more than an affair to Ryan. She was a pattern. Back home, while I was finalizing my evidence, everything came crashing down in a different way. I got a call from my daughter's school. Mia, 10 years old, gentle as a breeze, had suffered a severe asthma attack during PE. I was on the next flight home, no questions asked. I raced from the airport to the hospital, barely breathing. Held her hand through the night. That girl, my whole universe in one heartbeat, grounded me in a way Lisbon couldn't. I took over the household after that. Packed lunches, managed schedules, helped with homework, walked the dog, filed documents quietly, prepared our lives without Carol in it. When she finally returned, furious, flustered, half-broken from her HR leave of absence, I didn't raise my voice. I handed her a file folder. She didn't even open it. "What is this, Alex?" she asked. "It's everything," I said. "And it's the beginning." She stood there, folder in hand, blinking like the weight of the world had just dropped into her arms. And she couldn't decide whether to throw it back or open it and let the avalanche begin. "I don't have time for this," Carol said, her voice sharp, defensive, exhausted in a way I no longer felt responsible for. "You've clearly been obsessing." "I've been documenting," I said calmly, steady. "You can open it or not. Either way, it's already been submitted." Her jaw tightened. "Submitted where?" "Your company's compliance office. They're investigating. If you check your inbox," I gestured toward her bag, "you'll see the suspension letter. They CC'd you." For a split second, her mask cracked. I caught a flicker of fear, real and raw. But it vanished as fast as it came, replaced with manufactured indignation. "You had no right." "I had every right," I interrupted. "You brought him into our life. You risked our finances. You used our accounts. You broke our trust. And you dragged our name into something dirty because you thought I wouldn't notice. But I did." Silence. Not the kind that invites reconciliation, but the kind that marks the beginning of something ending. I stepped aside and let her pass. She stormed upstairs, slamming the bedroom door behind her. The same door we once quietly closed to protect sleeping children. Now just another barrier between two people who no longer lived in the same world. I didn't follow. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stared at the backsplash like it might offer me some kind of clarity. What do you do when the person you built a life with becomes a stranger? You document. You protect. You endure. In the weeks that followed, Carol spiraled in slow motion. Her company placed her under an internal ethics review, which essentially meant she was put on ice while HR untangled the mess. She tried to act like everything was normal, making small talk over dinner, asking about Mia's school play, bringing home groceries we didn't need. But I knew what she was doing. Damage control. She thought she could make me forget what I'd seen. Or worse, convince herself that none of it mattered because I hadn't caught her in the act. Only in the aftermath. But she was wrong. Because the damage wasn't just in what she did. It was in the way she did it. The secrecy. The rewriting of our history. The way she tried to make me feel paranoid for noticing her pulling away. Gaslighting, they call it. She never once apologized. Not sincerely. Not without conditions. Instead, she turned the spotlight inward. "I was under pressure," she said once, during one of her many attempts to justify herself. "You don't understand what it's like to constantly prove your worth to a company full of men who assume you're there to take notes, not make decisions." I didn't argue. I understood pressure. I understood feeling invisible. But I'd never used those feelings as a reason to betray my family. She didn't know I'd already met with a divorce attorney. Twice. Quietly, cleanly. We talked custody, asset division, risk mitigation. I presented every piece of digital evidence. My lawyer called it bulletproof. He said Carol would try to stall, to play the victim, to pivot. I told him I was prepared. The turning point came during a parent-teacher conference. Carol and I arrived separately, which in itself said everything. I sat beside her, tense but civil, while Mia's teacher spoke about her strong reading level and her empathy toward classmates. Carol smiled, nodded in all the right places, but the teacher, Mrs. Hollins, paused at one point, glanced between us, and said something that cut deeper than she intended. She's been drawing a lot of families lately, but she's been drawing them in halves. Like one parent on one side, one on the other. She doesn't say much about it, but I thought you should know. That was it. The wound behind the paperwork, the hurt behind the timelines. Our daughter trying to process what she didn't have words for. Later that night, I tucked Mia in. She asked if I'd still be here in the morning. "I'm always here, sweetheart," I said. She looked at me for a long time. "Mom says things are changing. Are they changing bad or changing good?" I didn't answer right away. "They're changing honest," I said finally. "And honest is always better." She nodded and turned over, clutching her stuffed bear like it could hold the world together. The very next morning, Carol received a notice from the bank. I had initiated the freeze on our joint accounts. Not to punish her, but to protect what was left. Too many charges had popped up at locations we hadn't agreed on. A sudden attempt to withdraw from our shared savings triggered a flag. She texted me a single line. "What the hell, Alex?" I didn't respond. Not to that. Instead, I sent her the draft custody agreement. It offered her generous visitation, weekends, alternating holidays, a fair settlement. But the house? The primary custody? The financial planning account I'd created for the kids' education? That was mine. The mediation was tense. Carol tried to posture, accusing me of surveillance, of sabotage. Her lawyer asked if I'd hacked her accounts. I simply presented the family iPad, the synced photos, the shared calendars, the receipts issued in her name, the hotel confirmations, the Apple Wallet keys. No hacking, just visibility. After 2 sessions, her tone changed. Her lawyer leaned in during a break and said, "She's not in a good position. If this goes to court, you'll win primary custody, and she knows it." We finalized it in mediation. Carol got the house, mortgage and all. I didn't want it. Too many ghosts. I got primary custody of the kids. I set up a custodial trust under my name. A clean educational fund, protected from interference. And a clause that prevented her from accessing shared financial instruments until she demonstrated employment for 12 consecutive months. She agreed. Quietly. Broken. Ryan? He vanished from her life the second the HR audit began. Resigned from his firm. Rumor had it he left town entirely. But his name showed up again later, on a legal complaint filed in another state for business expense fraud. Someone else's problem now. Mine was ending. And in that space I started something new. Not out of spite. Out of necessity. I launched Plan B for Parents, a digital guide and newsletter for people navigating infidelity, with kids in the mix. Not sensationalist. Not bitter. Just strategic. Legal tips. Financial safeguards. Cloud syncing tutorials. Real stories. Real outcomes. The first issue had 38 subscribers. Within 2 months, it had 6,400. People needed it. Not everyone wanted to fight with fists. Some of us wanted facts. I moved into a small apartment near Sloan Lake. Modest. Clean. Quiet. The kids stayed on school nights. Mia filled the fridge with drawings. My son, Lucas, made charts for our movie nights. I wasn't trying to replace what we'd lost. I was just trying to give them something stable to stand on. I kept the folder labeled Timeline. I updated it weekly, not for revenge, for clarity. Because someday, if they ask what happened, I won't tell them their mom was the villain. I'll tell them the truth. She made choices. So did I. There's this moment no one warns you about. Not during divorce, not after betrayal. It's not when the papers are signed or the keys are handed over. Comes later. Quiet. Uneventful. It's when you realize you're no longer waiting for something to explode. Because it already did. And somehow you're still standing. The day after the divorce was finalized, I took the kids to a park on the edge of town. the kind with giant wooden play structures, uneven swings, and a view of the mountains that reminded you the world was still bigger than your problems. Mia brought a book. Lucas raced the wind, and I sat on a bench with a notebook in my lap, unsure if I was supposed to feel victorious or just released. I didn't miss Carol, but I missed the version of her I thought existed. The woman who once squeezed my hand during ultrasounds, who danced barefoot in the kitchen while cooking Sunday dinner, who kissed my temple after long work weeks and told me, "You always take care of everyone." That woman had disappeared long before Ryan Doyle ever showed up. The real Carol, the one who had we*p*nized charm, we*p*nized excuses, and hid behind work dinners like she wasn't quietly dissolving our family, was never coming back, and I had to stop mourning her. So I focused on the kids, on structure, on routines. We made a whiteboard schedule that hung by the fridge. Monday night, tacos. Wednesday night, board games. Friday, movie night. The simplicity kept them grounded. Kept me grounded. There's something about holding it all together that reminds you what you're capable of. Especially when the other parent no-shows. Carol had 2 missed pickups in the first 3 weeks. The first time, she texted at the last minute. "Running behind. Can you cover?" No apology. Just expectation. I didn't respond. I just drove to the school, picked Mia up, and brought her home. The second time, she didn't even text. Mia waited in the school office for nearly 30 minutes before a staff member called me. "She didn't come," Mia said when I arrived, her voice small. I didn't say anything at first, just hugged her, tight. Then I made a mental note. When I asked Carol later, she blamed a misunderstanding with her calendar. But I didn't argue. I didn't threaten. I documented it. Quietly. 2 infractions. Logged. By the end of that month, I filed for a temporary modification of the custody agreement. My lawyer called it preventative. The court called it reasonable. Carol didn't show up for the hearing. She emailed in a statement claiming personal instability. The judge granted me full physical custody with flexible visitation at my discretion. I didn't block her. I didn't badmouth her to the kids. But I stopped making excuses for her. The shift came when Mia asked if we were ever going to be a together family again. I was rinsing dishes, sleeves rolled up, music playing low. It hit me in the spine. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I do know this, our family still works. It just works a little differently now." She nodded, lips pressed together, like she was trying to decide whether to believe me. "Lucas said Mom was crying when he saw her last," she added. I paused. "That might be true. Do you feel sad too?" she asked. I looked her in the eye. "Sometimes. But I don't feel broken." It was the best I could give her. The truth without burden. Honesty without bitterness. Later that week, Carol called. First time in almost 10 days. Her voice was shaky, stretched thin. "Alex, can we talk?" "Not about the kids. About me." I hesitated, then agreed to meet publicly. A cafe halfway between her apartment and my office. She showed up late, sunglasses on like she was hiding, hair messier than usual. No heels, just sneakers and a hoodie that looked like it hadn't seen a laundry cycle in days. "You look tired," I said, not as an insult, just observation. She took off the glasses. Her eyes were red. "I've been doing therapy," she said. "They assigned it through work." "HR still has you on suspension?" She nodded. "They're calling it an indefinite review now, which probably means termination's coming." I stirred my coffee. "That's not surprising." Her lips twitched. "You always were better at seeing things coming." There was a pause. Then she added, "I messed up. I know that's not enough, but it's real. I've messed up everything." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from her. "I believe you," I said. "But believing you isn't the same as trusting you." "I'm not asking for that," she said quickly. I needed to look you in the eye and say it." I nodded. "All right." She reached for her bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I wrote Mia a letter. Can you give it to her?" She doesn't answer my texts. I took the letter, tucked it into my jacket pocket. She'll get it when she's ready. Carol blinked hard. Are you going to tell her everything? Not now. Maybe not ever. Not in the way you're afraid of. But when she's older, if she asks, I'll tell her the truth. Carol looked away. That's fair. We sat in silence for another minute before she stood. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. I just wanted you to know. The affair wasn't about love. It was about escaping, being seen again. I didn't flinch. Then I hope someday you learn how to see yourself without needing someone else's reflection. She didn't reply, just left. I watched her go. That night I didn't cry. I didn't feel much of anything, honestly. Just quiet. A week later, her letter arrived in Mia's drawer. Hand-delivered by me. I didn't read it. Mia opened it the next morning. She didn't say much, just folded it up and asked, Can I keep this in my backpack? Of course. We didn't talk about it again. But she drew a new picture that night. Our family with 3 houses. Mine, Carol's, and one she called Somewhere Safe. When I asked what that was, she just shrugged and said, It's not real. It's just where I go in my head sometimes. I understood. I had a place like that once, too. As the months went on, Plan B for parents grew beyond what I'd imagined. I added a podcast, interviews, resource packs, legal templates. It wasn't about bitterness, it was about building resilience. Practical tools for people who'd had the rug pulled out from under them. I started getting messages. Hundreds. My ex gaslit me for years. Thank you for making me feel sane again. I thought I was the only one tracking hotel receipts. You helped me choose truth over chaos. I didn't reply to all of them, but I read every one. And on nights when the house felt too quiet, those words reminded me I wasn't just healing. I was helping others do the same. Carol eventually lost her job. She texted me once asking for a character reference for another firm. I didn't reply, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Ryan Doyle? A LinkedIn update months later said he was exploring new ventures. Someone sent me a link to a civil suit. I didn't click it. He wasn't my story anymore. My story was school pickups and grocery lists. It was movie nights and dentist appointments. It was routine over rupture, peace over drama, truth over image. One night, after putting the kids to bed, I found a picture Mia had drawn on the fridge. It was me, standing on a tiny island, holding an umbrella. Above me, dark clouds, lightning bolts, but underneath me, a root system, strong, deep. She'd labeled it, Dad, standing anyway. And for the first time since this entire mess began, I let myself cry. Not because I was broken, but because I'd finally, fully, stepped into the storm, and I hadn't been washed away. The first full year after the divorce came and went not with a bang, but with quiet milestones only I seemed to notice. The kids stopped asking when Mom was coming to dinner. The mail stopped including her name. And on a rainy Sunday morning, I realized I'd stopped checking my phone for her out of habit. Grief doesn't always announce its departure. Sometimes it just fades out between loads of laundry and the silence of not having to explain your hurt anymore. What was once a constant hum, Carol's absence, the wreckage she left, the need to prove I was okay, had been replaced by something softer. Peace. Not the dramatic kind with therapy breakthroughs or sudden forgiveness, but the practical kind. The kind that shows up when the dishwasher's running, the kids are laughing in the other room, and no one is lying to you. In January, I took Mia and Lucas to Lisbon. They didn't know what the city meant to me, only that it had castles and tiles and weird elevators. I didn't need them to know the whole truth yet. All I wanted was for them to feel safe, curious, and maybe, for once, somewhere new without any ghosts. We stayed in the same neighborhood where I once rebuilt my life in silence. I rented the same room, though it looked smaller now with 2 kids running circles around me. The lady at the corner cafe remembered my order. Você voltou, she said with a smile. You came back. I nodded. This time with purpose. We spent 10 days wandering cobblestone streets, eating pastéis de nata, taking photos Mia insisted on printing when we got home. Lucas collected bottle caps from beachside cafes and declared them currency for a made-up game he played on the plane. I left a journal page behind in the drawer of the Lisbon room, something I'd written during the storm. Your future doesn't care who broke you, only what you build next. When we returned to Denver, life resumed: school, work, piano practice, dentist appointments, but it all felt lighter, like the gravity had shifted just enough to make things manageable. Carol stayed in her orbit. We exchanged only what was necessary: pickup times, medical updates, school events. She'd stabilized somewhat, found a job in a different industry, avoided questions, avoided eye contact. We were polite, but there was no pretense of repair. One evening, after a school recital, she lingered longer than usual in the parking lot. "Alex," she said, arms folded tightly, "do you ever think we could have gotten back on track? If things had gone differently?" I looked at her for a long moment. The question wasn't about regret. It was about revisionism, a rewrite, and I was done with rewrites. "No," I said. "We got to where we were because of who we became. Not one bad night, 1,000 little ones." She looked down, nodded, said nothing else. And that was that. I didn't wish her pain, but I didn't wish her back either. The truth is, I didn't hate her. I just didn't trust her. And I'd finally learned that you don't need to hate someone to walk away. You just need to choose peace over potential. As for Plan B for parents, it grew more than I ever expected. It started as a practical toolkit: financial checklists, legal guidance, app tutorials. But over time, it evolved into something more emotional. Submissions poured in: stories of betrayal, yes, but also of rebuilding, of custody wins, co-parenting boundaries, and the slow art of trusting your gut again. I added a new section to the site: letters never sent, anonymous messages to exes, to past selves, to future partners. The vulnerability was unreal. I'm not angry, just done.